Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Read Becca for my weekly chatty catch-up on everything I read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general lifey chit-chat. And we are already quite discombobulated today because I have no internet, which makes uploading a video quite challenging. So I may have internet back in an hour, or it may not be today, maybe in several days, I don't know. So you will probably wind up seeing this whenever I do have internet back. So that will be your sign that it's back up. But who knows when that will be. So anyway, let's get onward to the book. So the first one I have is The Dam by David Almond, illustrated by Levi Pinfold. And this is a library book. I am still on my Read What You Want challenge, but I saw this on Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads maybe 2 months ago, maybe more. And it looked very beautiful. And so this is a candidate for a birthday gift in the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to check it out from the library before spending a load of money on a tiny children's book. Because this is a children's picture book that is depicting a true story about a dam in England where they built it and they were going to be flooding the valley below, where all these houses were present, abandoned and derelict still, that were going to be flooded. And so this father and daughter go through the valley in all of the houses and play music through them to sort of represent and recognize the life that existed in those before they were flooded. And so they're doing this ahead of the flooding of the valley. And so I don't know that I necessarily appreciated as much the sentimentality of that act, but I did appreciate the beauty of this, both from the artistry perspective and that they are going in and doing something to kind of memorialize what has happened there and people's lives that existed there that are going to be just washed away. So it is very simple in terms of writing, but incredibly, incredibly beautiful. So I'm very happy to have checked this one out and be picking up a copy as a gift. And then the other thing I read was also delightful and beautiful, and it's Mary Stewart's Thornyhold. So I picked this up to buddy read with Dia from Novel Idea, and we kind of picked this up for March Mystery Madness. And this does have a vibe maybe of cozy mystery, but it is so cozy it doesn't really go to any one thing in terms of genre strongly, and it also does not have any murder. But I would say it probably does fit somewhere close to mystery, so I'm going to count it anyway. So we are following Jilly as our main character, and Jilly is someone whose life has a lot of questions and lack of clarity. She doesn't really ever fit anywhere. So we are not really driving toward anything directly or strongly in this, other than maybe Thornyhold, but we're just meandering along with Jilly through her life. So that very much is the vibe with this. And we start with Jilly as a young child, and we're just following through as she's a young child going to school, major things that are happening with her family, or not even really major things at times, just the forward momentum of life really is what is there. And through all of that, as she's growing up, there is a godmother who is also named Jilly, who occasionally just pops up in her life, and they're not close. But Jilly clearly adores this godmother. She's a very beloved person in her life, even though they haven't spent a ton of time together. And they just have this special connection, really. And then one day, Jilly is a young adult, and she is going about her life, and there have been major changes in her life, as it is in her young adulthood. She thought she knew her path forward and was pursuing independence kind of already. And then her godmother dies and leaves her house, Thornyhold. And it has such a really lovely kind of cottagecore vibe, before cottagecore was a thing, because it's so gentle, and she is showing up to this house that's full of her godmother's stuff, and she doesn't know anything. She's never been there before, so she is uncovering details while also going through the sort of community building aspects of making connections with people in the community. Immediately when she arrives at the house, one of her neighbors who kind of cleans occasionally, or used to clean occasionally for her godmother, is already there and in the house, taking care of things for her. And so she is completely caught off guard. And clearly this is a small rural community because people are constantly up in her business. So it is that kind of thing where she shows up in this small, tight-knit community and immediately starts making connections for either good or ill. And there's some tension and suspense to that, or unease, as Dia said. She I think hit it on the head. It's not quite suspenseful or tense. Like, everything is very, very mellow, and everything about this book, it feels like there are some stakes, but you know they're going to turn out okay. Is how this feels. So she's uncovering things about this house and what's going on there, and there is clearly a very witchy vibe and element, but she doesn't know entirely, and so she's trying to find out what's going on with that. So there's a certain speculative element to this story as well. It also has a slight romantic element. So certainly those things are all present, but none of them are very dominant or overbearing to the story. So you're kind of going into this for the gentleness of the story and just how lovely the scenery and place setting, the loveliness of the character. I think Jilly, for me, was someone that I deeply, deeply connected with, because she has this immense love of nature and the natural world, a connection with animals that's incredibly strong, and I just absolutely empathize with her throughout. It was so delightful. And I think everything about this was very descriptive. You're in this incredibly beautiful setting for most of the book, and you're really getting those details to where you can picture it in your head very, very much. So yeah, this was just a really wonderful book, and I think I would say both myself and Dia felt the writing here really strongly resembles something that feels like Daphne du Maurier. So if you are a fan of du Maurier and want something a little more gentle and calming, like, this is a great place to go. It was so fantastic, and we had a wonderful time reading it together. So very good one. So I definitely want to read some more Mary Stewart for sure. And then the stuff I have in progress onward. Starling House, I made a little bit of progress on. The Irish RM, I started the first story as my big bind up for the Irish Readathon, and it was mostly about fox hunting. So I'm a little mixed on how I feel. I was not able to suss out what the vibe of these stories are yet because of that, I think, mostly. And then on audio, I started The Forbidden Library by Django Wexler. This is a middle grade book for middle grade March. So that's what I have in progress. Really, this week was an incredibly slow reading week. Like, the couple of chapters a day we were reading of this on the weekdays was it for reading. So onward to what I watched. Problematically, I have no internet, as I mentioned, so I blazed through all the stuff I had downloaded on my tablet. So we have to go try and find Wi-Fi to see if I can download something else to have to watch during winding down before bed, because that's when I usually watch stuff. And so I kind of watched very random things. I don't think that the episodes I had downloaded of the one series that I watched were the end of it. So I think I'm going to skip that one until I find out if it was the end or not. But I did watch 2 movies, in fact. So I watched Damsel first off, and it's kind of very traditional medieval-y style fantasy, but it's really odd how they've set it up, because it almost feels like they were trying to do a horror movie in a traditional medieval fantasy. So we're following Millie Bobby Brown as this princess in a far-flung northern kingdom, and actually the cast, really very star-studded cast. We have like Angela Bassett, Robin Wright Penn, like quite a lot of people that are great, but it was really badly written. So anyway, premise is the princess of this northern far-flung place they're really struggling, and they're not going to make it through winter. Basically, they don't have the resources for their people to survive, and people are leaving and all that kind of thing. But they get an offer that sounds a little too good to be true, where there's just piles and piles of gold if Millie Bobby Brown gets shipped off to this other country and married to their prince. They're going to get a great bride price that will pay for everything and keep the community going through hardship. And so the kingdom do that. She goes there. She kind of gets Twitter-pated for the prince, obviously, and it just seems very, very lovely. But quite obviously, the setup is really, really obvious. Within the first few minutes, they're going to feed her to the dragon. Like, it's real apparent that's what's going on. So they toss her in the cavern with the dragon, and of course, basically the entirety of the film is her fighting her way to kill it and try and survive. So it almost feels like a slasher final girl type thing, and like her just keeping going. Yeah, and that's what the whole movie is. It's really, yeah, it was just her trying to be a badass and survive a dragon. But it's action packed and like obviously entertaining enough that I kept watching it, though I had no other options. But the other thing that I watched was Good on Paper, which is a comedy, sort of a rom-com, but not quite, starring Eliza Schlesinger and Margaret Cho, who are both stand-up comedians. And the main character, Eliza Schlesinger, is basically just herself. Like this successful comedian who's also trying to be an actor and struggling at that. And she meets a guy who's too good to be true. Another too good to be true moment in this. And he really, really is. So she finds out that he's really been lying about a lot of stuff. And they've had this really whirlwind relationship. And so she kind of wants to uncover more reality about him and starts digging a bit. And it kind of goes off the rails. So that one, in fact, I really liked. I hugely enjoy Eliza Schlesinger's comedy. So this was really her tone, and very like sort of angry, scorned woman a bit. And I like that. And Margaret Cho I really like as well. So I liked that. Unfortunately, I had actually watched this movie before and hadn't realized it when I downloaded it. And so I knew everything that was happening and I'd already seen it. And it's not that great of a movie and there's not a lot of rewatch value, so it was just fine. I think it was very enjoyable on the first watch, but not a great rewatchable one. So now I'm out of things to watch. So who knows? Hopefully my internet will come back and I won't have to worry about it, but if not, I will be trying to locate someplace to download stuff. So that's all for the stuff that I watched. Onward, I guess, obviously jumping into the life stuff, the obvious is that my internet is out because there were massive storms through the Midwest that are now, I think, moved to the south quite a bit, and major temperature changes, things like that. So I am fine. Everything here is fine. Or here as in my house. Everything here in the area is not fine. There's massive power outages. Hundreds of thousands of people have no power. I've fortunately had bounces in my power overnight, but it has been up and good. The internet outage, they had a downed line, but they repaired the line, and since then, the power outages have actually been keeping the internet down. So who knows when that will be fixed, because that may be going for a while, considering how broad the outages are affecting. So nothing too major in my neighborhood. I went around kind of, and trees and stuff already were getting cleaned up. There were a couple of downed trees, lots of branches around, that sort of thing. Lots of roofing all over and like gutters and stuff, but it didn't look like it was actually from our neighborhood. It looked like it had probably come in from other neighborhoods, because Friday night the wind started blowing massively, and it was probably some of the strongest winds I've ever experienced here, but everything was completely clear. And then like 8 o'clock, it started raining and getting actually stormy. And by like between 8:30 and 9, we started having actual tornado warnings and sirens going off. And that was continuous until about 11 o'clock, which I think is one of the worst that I've been through in terms of sirens just continually going off. It does not normally happen that way. Or when I say sirens, I mean tornado sirens. So if you live in a place where there are tornadoes, there are sirens that go off that you can hear from everywhere. That tell you need to go to your basement or an interior room or whatever your sheltering location is, because there is a potential for tornadic winds and rotation. So yeah, so we did have multiple tornadoes touch down, but nothing hit here. I think the very worst that I saw out in my neighborhood was a tree had taken out somebody's back porch, and that was it. It didn't look like anything had fallen on actual buildings or anything like that. No major damage, so I'm very thankful for that, but I'm just hoping my internet comes back sometime soon. So that's mostly what's going on right now. As far as my week, I mentioned I barely read at all this week because I was terribly busy at work, both terribly busy and terribly mentally draining at work. So I was watching a lot of dumb stuff, and I didn't finish anything, obviously. A lot of YouTube watching. And I was just struggling, spinning my wheels with reading. So I both didn't have a lot of time and didn't have a lot of mental energy for reading at all. So it was a very uneventful week for me personally, though a very eventful week in the area here. So I think with that is all I've got. And I don't think I have any recommendations because I have not been watching that much BookTube really, and I haven't watched any BookTube at all this weekend so far. So we will see what happens this weekend. I think that's all for me for now. I think so. With that, I will leave you and say, I hope if you're especially in the Midwest, I hope you are safe and dry and not impacted by the storms terribly. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you have power and internet. I know a lot of people all over the Midwest were very badly impacted. So I'm sure there will be people in our community that have been impacted. So I truly hope that you have a wonderful coming week in both reading and your life. And thank you so very much for watching.